The record of the Silent Ones, the grand archival chamber of the Pangalactic Assembly, stretched 300 meters into the hollowed-out crystalline core of Volt Prime. Floating light globes cast soft violet illumination over millions of data spindles containing the recorded histories, treaties, and biological codices of 17,000 sentient species. Senior Administrator Kaelin adjusted her magnification lenses as her fingers danced across the luminescent console of the Forbidden Vault. High Command had issued an emergency security directive 20 minutes prior. An unidentified massive fleet had just dropped out of sublight at the system's outer perimeter. They bore no registration transponders, ignored all automated greeting beacons, and moved in an eerie, absolute radio silence. Kaelin had been ordered to run a deep-tier pattern match against the Assembly's most restricted, ancient records to identify the silent intruders. Her console chimed softly. A crimson biometric seal dissolved, unlocking a file that had been buried under 9 layers of high-level encryption for over 12 centuries. Archival record, Class 9 Extremis. Designation, the Silent One's Terran Offshoot / Sector 0. Status, classified / do not approach / absolute non-interference. Kaelin's 4 eyes narrowed as she read the opening preamble. Historical overview: 800 years ago, during the First Expansion War, the Pangalactic Assembly attempted to forcibly annex a small, isolated star system on the galaxy's rim. The species inhabiting the system refused to sign the accord, refused to surrender their resources, and refused to engage in traditional diplomatic posturing. When the Assembly sent an enforcement armada of 400 capital warships to compel compliance, the local species did not broadcast a declaration of war. They did not issue threats. They simply severed all external communications, deployed a massive gravimetric shroud across their sector, and vanished from galactic space. Combat performance and doctrine. Engagement style: 0 verbal or electronic communication prior to, during, or after combat operations. Primary fleet weaponry: relativistic kinetic accelerators and localized spatial collapse arrays designed for absolute infrastructure negation. Historical result: the Assembly Enforcement Armada was systematically dismantled in less than 6 minutes, without a single casualty reported among the defenders. All surviving Assembly crews were placed in automated escape pods and gently towed back across the border. Crucial archival note: the Assembly High Council wiped all public references to this species to prevent galactic panic. They were designated the Silent Ones due to their complete refusal to engage in diplomatic chatter, threats, or ideological posturing. Their doctrine is simple: complete isolation until their perimeter is breached. If a silent fleet appears in your sector, it is not an invasion. It means an unauthorized entity in your star system has breached their perimeter line, and they have arrived to clean the slate. A cold, agonizing shiver ran down Kaelin's central spine. She quickly pulled up the live orbital sensor grid for her star system. Moving past her station, completely bypassing the archival vault, the massive, dark-hulled warships of the Silent Ones were not targeting the Assembly's archives or civilian centers. Their heavy kinetic batteries were locked entirely onto a rogue mercenary fleet that had secretly set up an illegal deep space mining rig on the system's outer rim 3 days prior, unwittingly drilling directly into the Silent One's perimeter boundary. High above the planet, the black void did not fill with heroic radio speeches or glowing plasma fire. In utter, terrifying silence, 30 massive angular warships swept past the orbital station. Their kinetic accelerators fired silently in the dark, vaporizing the mercenary mining rig in a fraction of a second before smoothly executing a synchronized turn back toward deep space. Kaelin leaned back in her chair, watching her console screen slowly relock the classified file, leaving her alone in the quiet violet light of the vault. They hadn't come to conquer the galaxy. They had just come to enforce their peace. The mercenary mining rig did not explode into a fiery fireball. In the airless void of space, 300,000 tons of illegal drill alloy and illegal processing bays simply disintegrated into a fine, glittering dust cloud under the impact of relativistic tungsten slugs. On the central bridge of Volt Prime's orbital defense nexus, High Commander Teth stood frozen before the main holotank. His mandibles were locked, his 4 eyes wide with raw, disbelieving horror. The 300 mercenary vessels that had bullied the system for 2 weeks were gone, erased from the sensor grid in less than 11 seconds. All defense batteries, report, Teth choked out, his voice trembling across the command channel. Did their fleet target our orbital stations? Are their weapons locking onto our power grids? No, High Commander, his chief sensor officer cried, staring at a board that remained eerily clear of targeting pings. They aren't pinging us. They aren't even scanning our atmosphere. The unknown fleet is. They're already reversing their thrusters. Down in the subterranean vaults, Senior Administrator Kalen scrolled frantically through the newly unlocked subfiles of the Class 9 Extremis dossier, her eyes darting across century-old battle logs and tactical analyses written by forgotten assembly generals. Tactical Protocol, the Silent One's Rule 1, never broadcast a distress signal, challenge, or surrender request on radio or subspace frequencies. The Silent Ones operate without electronic comms suites. High-yield broadcasts are processed by their fire control AI as active targeting guidance. Rule 2. Do not power up targeting arrays or charge kinetic shields in their presence. Passive non-resistance is the only verified survival protocol. Rule 3. They do not occupy territory. Once the boundary breach is neutralized, they depart. Kalen slammed her palm onto her desk communicator, overriding the High Commander's direct line. Commander Teth, do not engage, Kalen screamed into the mic, her voice echoing off the crystalline arches of the archive vault. Order all defense platforms to go dark immediately. Cut your radar, drop your shield grids, and instruct every patrol ship to hold their position. Administrator, Teth's panicked voice barked back over the line. What are you talking about? Who are those monsters? They aren't monsters, Teth. They're the reason the Assembly erased Sector 0 from the star charts 800 years ago, Kalen shouted, sweeping her glass slate up to transfer the declassified dossier straight to his bridge. Read the record, they didn't come for us. They came for the mercenaries who drilled into their perimeter. If you charge a single plasma battery right now, their automated fire control will clean this entire star system to protect their border. On the orbital station, High Commander Teth looked down at his terminal as the ancient, crimson-stamped record materialized before his eyes. His scales drained of all color as he read the historical casualty logs from the First Expansion War, 400 Assembly capital ships. 0 human casualties. Battle duration, 5 minutes 42 seconds. Cut all active sensors, Teth whispered, slamming his fist onto the master override. Kill the targeting arrays, power down the defense grid, power down everything. Across the orbital ring, the bright blue energy shields vanished. The giant plasma turrets dropped their barrels, locking into neutral storage berths. The entire star system went functionally blind, falling into the same heavy, absolute silence as the dark ships drifting through their sky. Out in the void, the 30 massive, angular dreadnoughts of the Silent Ones completed their synchronized pivot. For 3 terrifying minutes, the black hulls hung in the shadow of Volt Prime's star, their dark, polished surfaces catching the pale violet light of the local sun. They offered no victory messages. They demanded no territorial concessions. They did not even leave a buoy behind to mark their presence. Then, with a sudden, silent warping of spacetime that bent the light of distant stars, the 30 warships vanished back into the deep, unmapped void of Sector 0. Inside the quiet archive vault, Kalen let out a long, shuddering breath, her hands trembling as she wiped cold sweat from her brow. On her desk display, the ancient record automatically began its re-encryption cycle, the crimson letters flashing one final time before fading into the dark. Boundary restored. Sector 0 secure. Kalen leaned back in her chair, looking up at the vast, silent rows of data spindles stretching into the violet gloom. The galaxy believed itself to be governed by grand assemblies, glorious treaties, and loud, booming empires. But deep on the rim, hidden behind 8 centuries of buried files and absolute silence, sat a species that spoke only when spoken to, and whose only word was absolute finality. For 4 hours after the Silent Ones vanished back into the void of Sector Zero, the star system remained wrapped in absolute, unbroken quiet. On the bridge of Volt Prime's orbital defense nexus, High Commander Teth sat frozen in his command chair. Power was slowly being restored to basic environmental systems, but the military targeting grids remained completely dark on his explicit order. Every officer on his bridge worked in hushed whispers, terrified that a single loud electronic pulse might summon the dark dreadnoughts back from the black. Down in the subterranean vaults, Senior Administrator Kalen watched a small, secondary monitor on her console. While the primary Class 9 dossier had re-encrypted itself, a hidden sub-tier log remained open on her private terminal. A personal journal entry written 800 years ago by High Archivist Valen, the original administrator who had sealed the records of the First Expansion War. Archival Supplement, Personal Entry #804. Date, Post-Expansion Era redacted. Author, High Archivist Valen. The Council believes they have buried the truth by redacting the coordinates of Sector Zero. They tell themselves that humanity is a reclusive, isolationist anomaly that will stay behind its gravimetric veil forever. They are wrong. Humanity did not build their shroud to hide from us. They built it to buy time. In our hubris, we saw their silence as a desire to be left alone, but I have read their intercepted cultural transmissions before the blackout. They are a species that spent thousands of years warring among themselves until they mastered every instrument of destruction imaginable. When they reached the stars, they chose silence not out of fear, but out of a profound, terrifying self-restraint. They knew what they were capable of. They knew that if they engaged in the loud, greedy squabbles of our galactic politics, they would eventually finish us. God help the galaxy if anyone ever gives them a reason to speak. Kalen stared at the ancient words, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Her console chimed softly. High Commander Teth's direct line lit up on her display. She accepted the channel, and the miniature holoprojection of the shaken military commander appeared above her desk. Administrator Kalen, Teth said, his voice raspy and devoid of its usual military bravado. The Assembly High Council has just established an encrypted link from the capital. They picked up the gravimetric disruption from our sector. They are demanding an immediate incident report. Kalen looked up from the ancient journal entry to the commander's pale, trembling face. What do they want to know, High Commander? Kalen asked gently. Everything, Teth whispered, his 4 eyes darting nervously toward the viewport. They want to know who destroyed the mercenary fleet. They want to know why our defense grid was powered down. They want us to send a reconnaissance probe into the vector where those ships vanished. Kalen reached out and slowly touched the console, permanently purging the open archival journal entry from her terminal's memory cache. Commander Teth, Kalen said, her voice dropping into a steady, absolute register that commanded instant obedience. Tell the High Council that a rogue asteroid group suffered a spontaneous gravitational collapse due to illegal mercenary mining operations. Tell them the mercenary fleet was destroyed by their own unstable equipment, and that our defense grid suffered a temporary power surge. Teth blinked, his mandibles twitching. Lie to the High Council if they discover we falsified an official report. If you tell them the truth, Kalen interrupted, her eyes locking onto his with terrifying clarity, the Assembly will send an investigation fleet. They will send scouts, probes, and armed escorts to investigate the border of Sector Zero. They will poke at the veil. They will ripple the line. She gestured toward the empty void displayed on her window screens. And the Silent Ones will not send 30 ships next time, Teth. They will send 30,000, and they won't just clean a mercenary mining rig, they will clean the whole board. High Commander Teth stared at the archivist for a long, heavy moment. Slowly, The weight of her words settled into his mind, washing away the last remnants of his bureaucratic duty. He took a slow breath, bowed his head, and reached for his comms terminal to compose the report. "Understood, Senior Administrator," Teth said softly. "Spontaneous asteroid collapse, file closed." "File closed, Commander," Kaylin replied. She powered down her desk terminal, immersing her private office in the soft, tranquil violet light of the ancient archive. Out in the deep, unmapped darkness of space, the stars burned quietly, holding their secrets safe behind an invisible, unbroken line. The fabricated incident report cleared the Assembly's bureaucratic desks without raising a single flag. A rogue asteroid cluster collapsing under unstable dark matter mining drills was a mundane, plausible tragedy in a galaxy full of corporate greed and lax safety standards. The file was stamped, archived, and forgotten by the High Council within 48 hours. 3 months passed in tranquil, undisturbed quiet. Vault Prime returned to its rhythmic, centuries-old routine. Senior Administrator Kaylin spent her days cataloging tax treaties from dead star systems, while High Commander Teth oversaw routine patrol sweeps along the system's inner trade lanes. To all outward appearances, the terrifying brief appearance of the dark dreadnoughts had been nothing more than a bad dream that had dissolved back into the void. Then, a quiet anomaly appeared on Kaylin's private console. It wasn't an alarm, nor was it a gravimetric spike. It was a single, low-frequency data packet that had bypassed the main orbital receiver grid and deposited itself directly into her private terminal's local cache. There was no origin transponder, no encryption seal, and no sender address. The file contained only 3 items: a high-resolution orbital map of Vault Prime's primary planetary settlement, a precise mathematical breakdown of the colony's atmospheric scrubbers, and a brief text log written in standard galactic prose. "Incoming transmission / source, unregistered. To Senior Administrator Kaylin. Our automated perimeter monitoring arrays recorded your falsified report to the Pangalactic High Council regarding the incident at Sector 0 boundary. Your quick intervention prevented an unnecessary military escalation and saved 3 billion lives in your star system from automated containment protocols. As a gesture of goodwill, our engineering teams have attached an optimized calibration patch for your world's aging atmospheric filtration network. The current operational parameters on your southern continent were set to fail within 12 months. The attached patch will extend their operational lifespan by 2 centuries. We do not seek dialogue. We do not require gratitude. Maintain the integrity of our perimeter line and your space will remain undisturbed. Sector 0 Security Directorate." Kaylin sat frozen in her quiet, violet-lit office, her 4 eyes wide as she read the message 3 times over. She opened the attached calibration file and ran a diagnostic check against the colony's planetary engineering grid. The patch was flawless, an elegant, hyper-efficient mathematical realignment of the planet's scrubbers that solved an environmental decay issue her own engineers had been struggling with for a decade. She looked up from her terminal toward the sweeping glass viewport of the archive chamber. Beyond the crystalline arches, the pale violet sun of Vault Prime shone brightly over a peaceful, thriving world. The Silent Ones were still out there in the deep dark, watching every transmission, listening to every broadcast and calculating every variable. They didn't want glory, empire, or praise. But beneath their cold, terrifying efficiency was a species that still remembered the value of a life saved, and rewarded those who had the wisdom to keep the peace quiet. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads.